Greetings everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today's topic is the overview as ISO 13485 medical devices. I am Arta Lamani, the PECB organizer of this webinar, and the guest for today is Raza Shah, PECB certified trainer and chief editor and owner of Biltehqeeq. Please feel free to write your questions and comments in the question box in the right-hand control panel, or you can use the raise hand function. We will unmute you and you will have a chance to ask the question directly. Mr. Shah will answer to all questions accordingly at the end of the presentation. Please, Mr. Shah, you may start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am Raza Shah from Pakistan. Today our topic is overview of ISO 13485 medical devices. Welcome to everyone. As a professional, I have been conducting audit for the last 15 years on different standards, and I am a editor for ISO 9000, ISO 14000, SA 8000, ISO 13485, and ISO 22000. Today we will have an overlook of medical devices standard, which is ISO 13485. As most of the people are well familiar with the standard ISO 9000. So the ISO 13485 is also a quality management system latest standard, but it is for the medical devices. It has the same requirements like ISO 9001, but it has some additional requirements which are more mainly focused on the regulatory standards and meeting customer requirements and maintaining the effective quality management system. Same like ISO 9000, it focuses on customer satisfaction and continual improvement, but it also taking care of other regulatory requirements. The ISO 13485 have some more emphasis on meeting medical devices requirement, risk management, work environment and cleanliness, complaint handling and corrective action. ISO 13485 follows the process approach introduced in ISO 9000-2000 standard. So its main focus is on the regulations. It emphasizes more on documented management review, awareness, resources required to meet them, define process and records to demonstrate conformance. So as far as the ISO 13485 is concerned, its main focus is the regulatory requirements. This standard is applicable on volunteer basis and designed to a particular medical device manufacturer. It covers all the quality management system requirement, and which include Europe, Australia, Japan, Canada, South Korea, and Brazil. But it doesn't mean that a company certified in Europe can be certified in other country, because every country has its own regulations, and if a company have to certify in this country, it have to fulfill the requirements of this country also. For example, if you are certified on ISO 13485 in Europe, and you want to get certificate, launch your medical devices in another country like Canada or Japan, you have to fulfill the requirements of these countries, and you have to get a 13485 certification from these countries also. Basically, ISO 13485 provides the requirements for a comprehensive management system and can be used by an organization for the design, development, production, installation, and servicing of medical devices, as well as for the design, development, and provision of related services. The requirement of ISO 13485 describes a systematic approach within which manufacturer can identify, review, and decide on the appropriate manner to incorporate regulatory requirements, other standards, and regulatory guidance documents into the quality management system include. So, necessary resources, uh, system of internal audit and management review, infrastructure and competent personnel, documentation and record for operation of quality management system to address non-conformity, corrective action and preventive actions. So if we can see that basically its structure is similar like ISO 9000 quality management system. Now if we as we are going further, we have the different section and we will overview this section. Section 1 covers the scope, talk about the standard and how it applies to the organization. Section 2 normative references, another document that should be used along with the standard. Section 3 terms and definition gives definition related to medical devices. Overview, the key section of ISO 13485, section 4 quality management system requirement. Section 5 covers the management responsibility. Section 6 talks about the resources management. Section 7 describes the product realization. Section 8 measurement analysis and improvement. Now we will review these sections in detail. Section 4 is about a general requirement. 4.1 implementation and maintenance of an effective quality management system provide medical devices meeting customer and regulatory requirements. Ensure control of outsourced processes. So we have to fulfill the requirements to meet the customer expectations and regulatory requirements, and also if there is an outsourced process, we have to also control this process. And 4.2 documentation requirements, what is to be done and by whom, when, where and how it is to be done, what materials, equipments and documents are to be used. How an activity is to be monitored and measured, design history file, technical file, complaint file, device record, and any exclusion. If there is any exclusion, we have to also describe this exclusion. So we have to develop a proper documentation procedures, who is responsible for what and who is doing what. And the section 5 is management responsibility, and management responsibility start with the management commitment, as same like the ISO 9000. Management commitment is demonstrated by actions ensuring process of trade as an effective network of integrated processes. And 5.2 is the customer focus, ensure customer requirements are understood. And third is 5.3 is the quality policy. Establish commitment to quality, continuing effectiveness of the quality management system, meeting customer and regulatory requirements. So if we conclude this slide, it is starting with the management commitment and with the customer focus and quality policy. Development of the quality policy, and main focus of the quality policy is the fulfillment of the customer requirements as well as the regulatory requirements. And the quality policy should be reviewed periodically for continued applicability. 5.4 is planning, includes setting quality objectives and associated targets for the quality management system and for medical devices related services, and defining time frame for achieving targets. So we have to plan and set the targets, and we have to describe in what way we will be able to achieve these objectives. An organization quality management system is influenced by varying needs, particular objectives, the production, the products provided, the process employed, the size and structure of the organization. So the quality management system of different organization will be different because it is influenced through the by the needs, by the objectives by the products, by the processes, and the size and structure. ISO 13485 does not imply uniformity in the structure of the quality management system or uniformity of the documentation. So it is not necessary that all the ISO 13485 certified companies have the same set of documents or structure. They can vary, but they have to fulfill the requirements of the standard. But it is upon each organization how it will fulfill these requirements. 5.5 is related to responsibility, authority, and communication. The organization should have to define the responsibility as authority, and it should be documented. Position description, including responsibilities and authorities. Organization chart can be included in document procedure or flow chart. Independent must be demonstrated for certain activities like internal audit, one design review, participant management representative. Above document must be controlled. So the organization have to set the responsibilities and authorities, and these responsibilities and authorities should be communicated and must be documented, because it is the requirement of 4.2.3 that every document should be controlled. And 5.5 also state that within an effective quality management system, communication must be encouraged, clear and understandable, bi-directional at all level of the organization, open and active. So there is a proper mechanism of communication. If you have set a responsibility and authority of any person, it must be communicated to him and also to the other concerned persons. Internal audits, external assessment, management review, bulletin board, all employees meeting station box. These are all examples of communication channels. Management review, we are 5.6 is related to the management review. Periodic assessment of the parliamentary system for continued suitability, adequacy and effectiveness. And the inputs for the management review include results of the audits, customer feedback, process performance and product conformity, status of the preventive and corrective action, follow-up action from previous management review, changes that could affect the quality management system, recommendation for improvement, and new or revised regulatory requirement. So during the each management system, these are the requirements of the standard. You have to discuss each element starting from A and ending to H. You can also discuss the other things during the management review meeting, but these are compulsory that you have to discuss each element starting from A to H. Management review output include agenda, attendance record, presentation material, improvement needed to maintain the effectiveness of the quality management system and its process, improvement of the product related to customer requirements, resource needs, statement of conclusion, the effectiveness of the quality management system. So, if you are familiar with the ISO 9000, the meeting will be in the same manner which you are managing for the ISO 9000 quality management system. The next is the resource management. Provision of resources 6.1. Resources can be people, infrastructure, work environment, information, supply, and partners, natural resources, financial resources. Adequate resources are prerequisite to an effective quality management system. So the management have to ensure that it is providing all the necessary resources, because if there is no resources available, the effective quality management system cannot be implemented. And human resources is a main resource, and it includes personnel performing work affecting product quality and device safety, and effectiveness must be competent. So all the humans who are performing different activities must be competent in terms of their education, their experience, their skill, and they must have been trained effectively, and they must have the formal certification of their job. Like if you have some welder or soldering, he must have the related certification. Yes. Organization must be able to demonstrate this, and if it required, that organization can present that its human resource are competent. And the next resource is the infrastructure. It includes building, workspace, utility, water, electricity, waste management, etc., process equipment, software and hardware, equipment maintenance activities and frequency, sporting services, cleaning. If not considered and appropriate, defined the above example can potentially affect conformance with product requirements. So you have to provide the infrastructure which is necessary to develop or produce a quality product. Work environment. The most significant factor within the work environment that can affect product quality or process equipment. Establish work environment, controlled environment, clean room, personal, internal and external, health, cleanliness, proactive equipment, gear, static disetting, wrist, bronze, hoods, and coning. Established means defined, documented, implemented, and maintained. And you have to establish these work environment. It means that it should be defined, documented, and implemented and maintained. The next section is the product realization, and product realization is starting with 7.1, planning of the product realization. Product realization describes the process starting with planning, determination of customer requirements, customer communication, design and development, purchasing, production and servicing, control of monitoring and measuring devices, delivery of the medical device, record keeping requirements. And now we will go through these all elements step by step. Planning of the product realization, the organization shall determine product quality objective and requirements, definition of medical device lifetime, record retention, establishing process and document resources needed, design and development, verification and validation, monitoring and inspection, test activity and product acceptance criteria, risk management records. Customer related process 7.2. Focus is on product and services to be supplied. This includes requirements related to the product, design input, output, for new product development, customer delivery expectations versus delivery schedule, customer feedback and communication relative to order placed or product delivered, regulatory or legal requirements, design related factors included in customer orders, unspecified customer expectations. So you have to take care what that customer is expecting, and you have to understand the expectation and requirement of the customer, so you can develop your product according to the requirement of the customer. If you are if there is some flaw in the understanding of the customer requirements, you cannot fulfill its expectation. 7.2 is customer related process, review of product requirements prior to committing to supply. So you have to first review what the customer is asking. Product requirements defined and documented. Resolution of contract order discrepancy, ensure ability to meet defined requirements. Review of post-marketing product performance, additional product information, for example, service, additional applications, maintenance, updates, customer complaints, advisory notes. Again, records are keep. So you have to keep record of each activity. So before accepting the any order from the customer, you must ensure that you have well understood what he is asking and what he is requiring. And if there is any conflict, you must resolve this conflict before accepting any order. And 7.3 is related to design and development, and which state established procedure describe design process and all design activities, goals and objective of the design and development program, what is to be developed, and timeline. The market's intended identification of organization responsibility with respect to ensuring quality during the design and development phase to include interface with any suppliers. Identification of the major task by phase of the design, expected outputs, deliverables, and records from each phase, identification of appropriate existing and anticipated measurements and validation and production related activities. The selection of the reviewers and composition of review team, planning transfer to production, risk management activities, supplier selection. And design input includes intended use of the device, indication and contra indications for use of the device, performance claims and performance requirements including normal use, storage, handling and maintenance, user and patient requirements, physical characteristics, human factors, usability requirements, safety and reliability requirements, toxicity and biocompatibility requirements, electromagnetic compatibility requirements, limits, tolerances, measurements and monitoring instruments, risk management or risk reduction methods, reportable adverse events, complaints, failure for previous products, other historical data, documentation for previous design, compatibility requirements with respect to accessories and auxiliaries device. Design input continuing compatibility requirements with respect to the environment of intended use, packing and labeling, including consideration of to deter forcible misuse, uh, customer user training requirements, regulatory and statutory requirements of intended markets, relevant volunteer standards including industry standards, national, regional or international standards, harmonized and other consensus standards, manufacturing process, sterility requirements, economic and cost aspects, lifetime of the medical device requirements and need for the servicing. And design output may include specification for the raw materials, component parts and sub-assemblies, drawing and parts trays, customer training material, process and material specification, finished medical devices, product and process software, quality assurance procedures including acceptance criteria, manufacturing and inspection procedures. Design output also include work environment requirements needed for the device, packing and labeling specification, identification and traceability requirements, including procedure if necessary, installation and servicing procedures, and material fields documentation for submissions to the regulatory authorities where the medical devices will be manufactured. If appropriate, a record file to demonstrate that each design was developed and verified in accordance with the design and development planning. And sample design and development review may address the following question. Do design satisfy specified requirements for the product? Is the input adequate to perform the design and development task or product design and process and capability is compatible. Have satisfied consideration been addressed? What is the potential impact of the product on the environment? Do design meet functional and operational requirements? For example, performance and dependability objectives. Have appropriate materials been selected? Have appropriate facilities been selected? Is there adequate compatibility of the material components or services elements? And is the design satisfactory for all the anticipated environment and local and load conditions? Are components or services elements standardized, and do they provide for reliability, availability, and maintainability? Is there a prevalence in tolerance and or configuration for interchangeability and replacement? Are plans for implementing the design technicality feasible? For example, purchasing, production, installation, inspections, and testing. If computer software has been used in design, computation, modulation, or analysis, has the software been validated, authorized, verified, and placed under configuration control? Have the inputs to such software and the output been appropriately verified and documented? Are the assumptions made during the design process valid? And now we will talk about the design verification, which is design verification is necessary to ensure that design outputs conform to the specific requirements. Design input, test, bench test, lab test, chemical analysis, etc. Alternative calculation, comparison with proven design, inspections, document review, for example, specification drawings, plan, and reports. And design validation goes beyond the technical issue of verifying output met input. It is intended to ensure that the medical devices meet user requirements and the intended use. Actual or simulated conditions consider capability and knowledge of user, operating instructions, compatibility with other systems, the environment in which it will be used, and restrictions on the use of the product performed on the production or production equivalent units. If production equivalent, need to document why it is equivalent. So you have to document it each and everything. Control of design and development change, and if there is any change in design, you have to also need to be documented. A product design may require change or modification for many reasons. Change can happen during or after the design phase. Change may result from design review, design verification or validation, omission or errors during the design phase which have been identified afterwards. Difficulties in manufacturing, installation, or sourcing. This management activities require request from the customer or supplier. Change required for corrective and preventive action. Change needed to address safety, regulatory, or other requirements, improvement to function or performance. So you can change the design if it is required due to any mentioned reason. You have to also study the effect of the change. If you change the design, you have to evaluate what effect it will have on product requirements and specification, intended use, current risk assessment, different components of the product or system, manufacture, installation or use, verification and validation, the regulatory status of the product. So if you change, if you are going to change the design, you have to see each and everything very thoroughly, that what effect it has on the other activities. The next class is related to purchasing. It is the same like ISO 9000. Even the class number is the same, 7.4. Purchasing supplier selection and control consists of establishing criteria, product parts, quality, system process control, methodology, etc., evaluating against those predetermined criteria, selecting ongoing monitoring. The extent depends on the nature and the risk associated with the product or services and includes outsourced process. So you have to evaluate the supplier and check them, and it should be an ongoing monitoring activity, and it depends upon the product or services and how you are outsourcing it. Uh, the purchasing information describe the product to be purchased in sufficient detail, such as technical information and specification, test and acceptance requirement, quality requirements for products, services, and outsourced processes, environmental requirements in manufacturing, storage, transportation, etc., regulatory requirements, certification requirements. So, when you are purchasing any thing, you have to describe each and every information, and you have to describe each and every requirement which are necessary for you and can impact the quality of your product, or maybe you have to fulfill some regulatory requirements. Purchasing information also include requirement for product approval and subsequent changes, procedure, processes, and equipment, qualification of personnel, quality management system requirement, method of communication responsibility, special instructions, traceability and test records, record retention and retrievability, etc. Condition for review and change to purchasing agreement, supply records, and organization record. So you have to also maintain these information, and you have to keep the record of these all the information and activities. Verification of purchase product to ensure specified requirements are met. Receiving inspections, shipment are complete properly identified, undamaged product incoming inspection, 100% sampling, you skip lot, etc. Certification of supplier, certificate of conformance, or acceptance test report from supplier. So you can verify the product by any way. By you can perform the 100% inspection, or you can select some sample to check, or you can also trust on the supplier certificate. It depends upon the nature of the product and the competency level of the supplier. You must be practically defined within organization quality management system, including action when required or not met. Applies to all products received from outside the organization quality management system. So if there is any problem in the outsourcing process, you have your verification activity should be increased. And now we are going to discuss product realization, and 7.5 is related to the production and service provision. Control of production and service requires controlled condition and includes many aspects. These aspects are the infrastructure, documented and record, procedure, specification, work instructions, and instructions, test results, defined by impact on the quality and regulatory requirement, as well as risk management activities, suitable equipment, process measurement, monitoring, activities for release, delivery, and post-delivery, including traceability. So you have to manage all these things in a controlled environment, and you have to control all these things, and you have to keep records of these all controls. Production and service provision. We are going to discuss the validation of process for production and service, which is required where the resulting output cannot be verified. In some processes, you are unable to verify the output during the process. So for these kind of process, you have to perform the validation and define criteria for review and approval of process, approval of equipment and personal qualified qualification, use of the specific method and procedure, criteria for revalidation, software used in automated process must be validated. So you have to define each and every criteria for such process which are required to be validated. Production and service provision 7.5 validation of process for product and service. Process validation activities can be described in phase, definition, review and approval of equipment specification, installation qualification, operational qualification, performance qualification. So where there is any such process, you have to define the criteria in terms of qualification. Production and service provision is same like ISO 9000. Identification is required throughout the product realization process. It includes raw material, components, finished medical devices. Facilities this facilitate fault diagnosis in the event of quality problem is a prerequisite for traceability. Provision for identification and segregation, returned medical devices from confirming products must also be established. So you have to develop a mechanism by using this mechanism you can identify any product at any stage of production. And traceability means the ability to trace the history or location of product or activity by recorded identification forward to customer, also known as tracking, device tracking, backward to raw material, components, process used in manufacturing, calibration, etc. Example, trace a non-contaminated back to its source and determine location of the remainder of the affected batches. Requirements are defined for implantable devices. So you have to develop a mechanism for traceability. By using this mechanism, you must be able to trace the history of any device you have shipped to the customer or you have purchased from any supplier. The next is customer property, and it states customer property within the context of the standard is defined as a property or asset owned by the customer and under control of the organization. Anything which has given by the customer to any supplier or organization is called customer property. Example of the such property are raw material or components of supplied for ingredient in the product, including packing material, products supplied for repair, maintenance, or upgrading, products supplied for the further processing, packing, sterilization, or testing, customer intellectual property. These must be properly identified, safeguarded, maintained. So you have to properly identify the customer supplied or customer property products, and you have to protect them, and you have to maintain the record of such customer property. And next is the preservation of products applies throughout the product realization process and includes storage, handling, transportation, and delivery. May include installation, gloves, static, and dissipative measure, gowning, temperature, humidity, dust, particle count, packing, methods of transportation, air, sea, ground, environmentally controlled, to avoid damage, deterioration, or contamination during handling, storage, and distribution. So you have to develop a mechanism that each product can be handled in a safe manner and during the delivery phase of the product to the customer, it should remain the same, and it should not be damaged. Control of monitoring and measuring devices. This clause is same like the ISO 9000, and it states the standard explicitly refer to the monitoring and measuring devices, including software, to ensure valid result. Instruments shall be calibrated or verified at specific intervals, traceable to standards, uniquely identified traceability to products, protected from damage, sterilization, or inadvertent adjustment during storage and use. Software used in monitoring or measurement process must be validated. For example, for calibration may be instruments used for indication only, not quantitative volumetric measurements, glass scales. So every instrument you are using for measurement must be calibrated. Monitoring and measurement processes are required to ensure conformance of the quality management system. And now we are going to discuss clause 8, measurement and analysis and improvement. And it starts with the 8.1 general requirements. Monitoring and measurement processes are required to ensure product conformance, insurance conformance of quality management system, maintain effectiveness of the quality management system. And 8.2 states monitoring and measurement. And feedback as key performance indicator of the quality management system include customer-related information, post-market surveillance, etc., internal and external audit results, monitoring and measurement of processes, not limited to production process but also quality management system processes. Monitoring and measurement of product may extend to point of installation. And 8.3 is the control of non-conforming product. If this includes non-conforming product occurring in the organization own facility as well as to the non-conforming product received or delivered by the organization, determine products affected, identify the non-conforming product at supplier, in-house, in transit, at customer, document the existence and root cause of the non-conformity, evaluate the nature of the non-conformity, determine and record a disposition to be made, control by physical segregation the subsequent processing of the non-conforming product, consistent with the disposition receipt, notify other as appropriate regulatory authorities, customer, suppliers, alternate material facility, define and implement corrective and preventive action, assess the effectiveness of corrective and preventive action. So you have to develop a proper mechanism of control of non-conforming products, and in a way that no non-conforming product will be shipped to the customer. The 8.4 is related to the analysis of data. This includes determination, collection, and analysis of appropriate data to demonstrate the suitability and effectiveness of quality management system, to evaluate if improvement of the quality management system effectiveness can be made. This encompasses supplier performance, product conformance, trends of process and product feedback. The results of these activities should feed into management review as well as considered for risk management activities. They also serve to identify opportunity for preventive action. So you have to analyze the data related to suppliers, related to in-house processes, related to customer complaints and feedbacks, and you have to discuss these. You should discuss this analysis of data during the management review, and you should use this analysis of data for the improvement. 8.5 is related to improvement. This again cover a broad scope. Continued suitability and effectiveness of the quality management system, documented complaints, investigation and resulting action, product advisory note, cases, field corrective action, communicated to customer and where applicable to the regulatory authorities. Improvement and also cover the corrective actions. Corrective action is intended to eliminate non-conformities with the intent to prevent recurrence. Non-conformities may be identified in the quality management system, on the product, in manufacturing process, in metrology, with training, environmental condition, control of equipment with suppliers. So you can take the corrective action to eliminate any non-conformity. And the corrective action should be effective. Effective corrective action includes the following: clear and accurate identification of the non-conformity, affected processes or procedures, identification of affected devices and as recipients, identification of the root cause of the non-conformity, action required to prevent recurrence, required approvals prior to taking action, records that corrective action was taken as identified. Effectiveness checks like to prevent recurrence, no new risk introduced by the corrective action. So every corrective action you are going to take must be effective. And in the same way, there are also preventive action, and preventive action is intended to address potential non-conformities. And this is to prevent the potential non-conformity. Sources to consider include information and data from receiving an incoming inspection, product requiring rework, reject or yield data, customer feedback and warranty claims, process measurements, identification of results that are out of trends but not out of specification, supplier performance, services reports, and concessions, deviations. Conclusion. It is important to bear in mind that ISO standards are updated periodically, reviewed and updated that do occur, and ISO is due for the update in next few years. As quality system standards are updated, you must ensure that quality management system must keep up with those updates in order the manufacturer remains in compliance. So this is expected that the current ISO 13485 standard will be revised in 2016. There are some benefit of these standards. Access to markets that recognize or require the certification, including Canada and Europe. Implementing a quality management system in general helps to motivate staff and provide a better definition of roles and key responsibilities. Reduce operational costs by highlighting process deficiencies and improving efficiency. Increase customer satisfaction by consistently delivering quality products and systematically addressing complaints. Proven commitment to quality through an internationally recognized standards adds transparency to the way complaints, surveillance, or product recalls are handled. So this is all about the quality management system for the medical devices. This is just an overview, and I have rushed so many slides just to finish to the basic concept of quality management system based on ISO 13485. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, for this presentation. Now, with the time left, we will go ahead with questions. Therefore, if you have any questions, it's the time to ask them. Please use the comment box or raise hand function in order to ask your questions. Thank you. The first question here is, in your experience with audits, what is a main nonconformity that medical device manufacturers face or you have encountered generally?
Mostly in our area, the non-conformity is related to a risk assessment. In the medical devices, especially which are manufacturing in the third world, there is very poor risk assessment. They don't cover all the aspects of the risk assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. The next question is, if you are an outsourcing manufacturer, do you have to implement ISO 13485 or the outsourcer must?
If the major operations are under your control, then it is not necessary that outsource process should be ISO 13485. But if you are managing the core processes outsourced, then it is must that outsource supplier should have 13485. But to be in the safe side, it is good that if all the actors in the supply chain must have the 13485.
Thank you. Another question is, in your experience, does ISO 13485 apply to all medical device manufacturers?
Yes, because it is a generic standard and you can apply it to all the organization. Either these are the small size organization or these are the big organizations or whatever they are manufacturing, it can be applied to all the organizations.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, which is, how often should a medical device manufacturer perform an internal audit considering the importance of the quality of their products? Please give an example in your opinion.
It is better to perform the internal quality audit twice in a year. But if there is a big organization and they can plan their internal audit by department wise, and if the organization is small, they can plan the full organization internal audit twice a year in a year. So twice in a year is mostly organizations are doing their internal audit.
Thank you. Another question is, what consent standard have most manufacturing used for the conformity of medical devices since the FDA has approved many?
Pardon?
What consent standard have most manufacturing companies used for the conformity of medical devices within their organization since the FDA has approved many?
FDA has its own quality management system standard, and it is QSR, Quality System Regulation. So if somebody have to fulfill the requirements of FDA, it is better to adopt QSR, Quality System Regulation, which is basically a medical related standard developed by the FDA.
Thank you. Let's see. I have the last question is, what is the main difference between CE marketing certificate and ISO 1348 certificate?
And the main difference is ISO 13485 is the system certification. It is a certification for the organization, but CE marking is for the product certification. It is for the product that it is fulfilling the specific requirements. But ISO 13485 is not the product certification, it is the system certification. So the main difference is the system certification and product certification.
Thank you. Because of the time limited, we have to conclude this presentation. However, if you have any other questions, you can send your questions through email and we will answer them individually. Thank you again, Mr. Shah, for this informative presentation. Also, I want to thank all the attendees as well for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. To keep up with our webinars, please check PECB's webinar schedule in our website www.pecb.com or our official social media network. Since next week we are organizing webinars on interesting topics. Next Monday, we will be hosting a topic on the proposed changes for ISO 13485 Part 1. Thank you again, Mr. Shah, and everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days.